how to sustain a healthy financial portfolio.
Hello, 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 everyone. Thank you for coming in. We are going to promote you up to panelists so that we can see your beautiful faces. However, you will be on mute. But once we are finished with the presentation, you will be able to ask questions and I will assist with that process. And so let me introduce myself for anyone who is not aware of who I am. My name is Nadine G, and I'm the owner of Let's Converse, which is a premium wellness brand for people of color. And we cultivate community and culture through conversation. And I have come together with Fit for Purpose to give you the Be Well experience. We are so excited to have amazing panelists here today, just filling your lives with all types of tips and strategies for how to be well. And we are now moving into our financial wellness pillar. And we have the amazing Alicia Holmes, who's going to jump in and get us started.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Alicia Holmes. I am a financial educator and coach. I often say that my North Star, what guides me, is seeing the Black community across the diaspora prosperous, thriving. But it's my personal mission, passion, personal ministry is the financial empowerment of women of color, particularly Black and Latino women. So just to share a little bit about who I am, what I do, I give a number of seminars, programs for women of color on investing and building wealth. So my background is just to tell you a little bit about my background, I have been an investor for 30 years. I worked in the nonprofit sector, but I was able to become a self-made millionaire when I was in my early 30s and completely and totally financially independent when I was in my early 40s. I was fortunate enough to have someone when I was only a college student take me under their wings and introduce me to a completely and totally different way of thinking about money, about thinking about financial well-being, about thinking about prosperity and choices and opportunities. And it was because of that information that my life was completely changed and shaped differently in the area of building wealth. So I like to tell a story of first meeting this person. I was actually at an alumni event on campus, really a party. And I must have been talking about being rich with some friends. And I remember I was on the dance floor and someone who tapped me on my shoulder and playfully said, "Do you want to be rich or do you want to be wealthy?" And at the time, I was like, well, what's the difference? And if anyone in the chat, you want to take a moment and a shot at, if someone asks you, what's the difference between being rich and between being wealthy, what your answer would be. Let's see if I can see the chat. So what I was told was the difference between being rich and being wealthy is if you're rich, you'll have money. But if you're wealthy, you'll have time. I was completely and totally intrigued by that. And for the next anywhere between 8 and 14 months, I was introduced to financial freedom, thinking about your money differently. And it was completely and totally life-changing. So this conversation, being rich and being wealthy, so generally having money versus time. So generally what we learn and what we taught is that you exchange your time for income, then mostly you spend that income. You exchange more time for income and you spend that income until hopefully one day you get to retire and you haven't accumulated too much debt and it's working against you. But what I was trained and taught was you exchange your time for income. You maximize how much of that income is being targeted towards investments that are growing for you and working for you. And then you live off the rest. And then you continue that cycle of exchanging your time, maximizing what you're investing and targeting towards purchasing assets that are growing until you no longer have to exchange your time for income, because those investments, those assets that were growing and working for you are at a point that they provide you the income so that you no longer have to exchange your time for income. You get your time back. And so I was completely and totally on board. I will narrow down that process of being in the game of building financial freedom, opportunity, and wealth. I could boil it down to 3 things that I learned. The first thing that I learned was you cannot hit a target that you cannot define. And so this game of wealth versus rich, how do you define it? And that's when I was introduced to the concept of net worth. I was also taught that you accomplish what you measure. So I often say, when I talk about this, if you take nothing else away, the very act of understanding net worth and measuring your net worth is life-changing. It makes you pay attention to things so much differently. So what is net worth? Assets minus your liabilities. That bottom line is your net worth. And so when you are tracking, paying attention to, understanding, and measuring your net worth, you are focusing on building assets and keeping your liabilities lower. We all know that our income can increase year after year after year after year without that affecting us building wealth or seeing our financial circumstances change. But if you're in the habit of paying attention to, tracking, and managing your net worth, it's in a completely and totally different game. So I was taught to be in the net worth game. So this is an example of a net worth calculator. It's on my website. I'll share that with you. You can download it for free. And so when you are paying attention to and tracking and measuring your net worth, you're looking at your assets. You're looking at your liabilities. The second thing that I was taught was to be masterful at managing how resources or money flow in and out of your life. So resources are flowing in our lives for all of us, but where are they flowing out to? Are they flowing out to the assets category? Are we purchasing assets that are growing and building our wealth? Or are we purchasing assets that are building everyone else's wealth? So I was taught to be in the game of the resources are coming in, where they're going. Are you going to be building your own assets? If you're buying, let's say, Nike sneakers, do you also buy Nike stock? I always talk about the fact that we love iPhones. We've been purchasing expensive iPhones for years. Are we buying Apple stock? So to have a mindset, and that was the third thing that I learned, to not just be a consumer, but be an investor, to have an investor's mindset, that saving does not build wealth. You have to have your resources growing for you and to be paying attention to being an investor. So armed with my net worth, life-changing, measuring it and paying attention to it, managing my money so that resources are directed towards building your assets and your net worth, and being an investor, to have a mindset to not only be a consumer, to be an investor. And again, I worked for nonprofits my whole life, making a third of very often what most of my friends made. But it's not how much you make very often, it's what you do with what you make. And because I hit the ground running, my first job, I was in intentional about my net worth, I was able to become a self-made millionaire in my early 30s and completely financially independent in my early 40s. And now I get to spend my time, and my passion is teaching other women, particularly women of color and Black and Latino women, this skill set, this understanding, and how you can put the past in the past, but having the right information and moving forward, it could be life-changing. Okay, so I talked about net worth and wealth. So whenever you see anything that's describing wealth, they're usually referring to, almost always referring to net worth. So how are we doing as a community around net worth? We're actually in a state of emergency for Black families. And why do I say that? There's a great study called The Road to Zero Wealth by Prosperity Now. And in that study, they talk about the fact that if the racial wealth divide is left unaddressed, the median Black household wealth is on a path to hit zero by 2053. If you look at this graph, you'll see that there's already pretty large a pretty large gap between African-American wealth and white families' wealth. So I want to just go a little deeper. I think this study is back from 2016 or so. So very recently, just so we can understand why we're in a state of emergency, very recently, the Federal Reserve of Boston, if you Google this, the net worth gap and the state of emergency and the wealth divide, they said, we're going to do a study in Boston here, the Federal Reserve of Boston. And in that study, they decided to look at the wealth of different communities in Boston. And what they found was white families in Boston had a median net worth of $247,500. I want you to take a moment. If you could type this into the chat and tell me, if you have not read this study, what the average net worth of Black families was in Boston, or is in Boston. So I'm just kind of checking out. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you know that they actually found that the median wealth of Black families in Boston was $8. And even when they published the study, you would see people saying, is this a typo? No, it is $8. And so I say that while I have to say that Black families in the United States, African-American families, spend $1.6 trillion. We have $1.6 trillion flowing into our households and our family. But where is it flowing out to when you see statistics like this? Are we in the process and in the understanding of not just being in the consumer game and having all of our income flow out to purchasing assets that are building other people's wealth? Are we in the net worth game and building wealth for ourselves? So the problem with this is everyone talks about it like it's a foregone conclusion and it's going to get worse. And I say that that does not have to be the case, and we can disrupt this. And so the group that I work with, I just want to share this the most, is Black women and Latino women. And so the median wealth for white women is $41,500. Single Black and Hispanic women have a median wealth of $100 and $120 respectively. When we go to our prime working years, where it goes up for almost all groups, for white women, it goes to $42,600. For Black and Latino women, it falls down to $5. So I don't want to keep going through. I'll just leave the statistics for this, but to let us know that right now, not being involved and in the asset building game and understanding investing is creating a situation where we have a state of emergency. And we do not have to treat it like a foregone conclusion. We can shift this. So I couldn't think of a better time to do a presentation like this. What do you do around investing and your money at times like this? Because it turns out that the last time that this happened, that there was a major market downturn, the 2008 crisis, it happened that African-American families lost somewhere between 50 to 60% of their wealth and were never able to recover. And so I want to share the kind of information we need to know so that does not happen in this cycle. So there is I'm going to start with the fact that there is a cycle of market emotions, how people make emotions, right? Make emotional decisions around where and how they're investing. But it's not necessarily based upon the accurate information you need to make those decisions. So let's say this is this graph here represents prices of the stock market. So when it's going up, there's optimism, excitement, thrill, euphoria. When it's at a high like that, when most people think this is the time to invest, that's actually the point of maximum financial risk. Then when it starts to go down and you see anxiety, denial, fear, depression, panic, capitulation, the very bottom, despondency and depression, that actually is the point of maximum financial opportunity. And then it goes back on the cycle, depression, hope, relief, optimism, and we're back where we are. And so this is real important to understand right now. The time when people are jumping into the market very often is at the point of maximum financial risk. The point that people are pulling out of the market, if you don't know, is at the point where there actually is maximum financial opportunity. So this conversation is about what you do with your portfolio. In order to know what to do, you have to have the accurate information. I'll say again. So we're in a major bear market. We're going through a major market downturn. And that means a bear market is when the market is going down versus a bull market, which is when the stock market is going up. Think about the bull on Wall Street that everyone likes to take pictures in front of. It's like strength in the market, the bull market. And the bear market is when it's going down. So what actually happens? What do you need to know to make decisions when you're in like a financial crisis market downturn like this? The average duration of a bear market is less than 1/5 of the average bull market. The average decline of the bear market when it goes down is 28%. The average gain is over 128%. And I just want to take a moment to understand that. So the important thing to remember is that a bear market is only temporary. The next bull market erases all of its decline and then extends the gains of the previous bull market. So what happens? Bear market, the market goes down for a short time. Then it goes back up to where the original point when it drops, and then it extends and continues to go up. And when it extends and it continues to go up, that's usually 4 times as long as the time that it went down. So the bigger risk for investors is not the 28% decline, but missing out on the next 128% gain. So I just want to go over quickly what happened the last time. The day the bear market was officially declared was in June 27th of 2008. The market fell 12%. Then in November of that year, it fell 21%. In January of 2009, it fell another 10%, over another 10%. Actually, if you look at that month on the 2nd and 3rd, it fell almost 21%. In March, it fell another 16% almost. During that time, the market fell 56.8%. Huge market correction. But then what happened? After the 2008 financial crisis, in less than 2 years, it rose 60% in real terms alone, between 2009 and 2010. Those with large holdings of non-home financial wealth were able to begin rebuilding their wealth immediately. Many in the know doubled down and saw their portfolios grow like never before. Fortunes were built. Others made a critical miscalculation and sold when the market was at its lowest. And the hardest hit were Black and Latino families. So by 2010, white families' wealth again rose to 9%. And now it's in a decline by 36%. And we still actually haven't recovered. So what to learn from this? What happened? Very often, we did not have emergency funds or family community capital to tide us over. And so what could have been minor financial problems turned into catastrophes because we didn't have emergency funds. There's a lot of interesting information about what actually happened. A lot of us sold our retirement accounts, and that's a huge compromise because we weren't able to have the future growth in the next bull market. Many sold at low points in the market out of fear and locked in those losses when the market rebound. And if you understand the market over time, it is going to go back up to where it was before it fell. And when it hits there, it usually extends and goes higher. So one of the worst things that you can do is sell at the lowest point. Then we put investments in guaranteed accounts or savings with low interest and returns during this downturn when everything was on sale. And again, or we completely stopped investing at the time when everything was on sale. So these are real important lessons to be learned right now while we in the eye of the storm of this happening. Okay, what to do now? This is an amazing time to be a steward of your money. Make sure at a time like this, you have an emergency fund. I say a minimum of $1,000 that you have someplace for emergencies only. Debt elimination. I work with a number of different groups. I do investing classes. And one of the first things I have people looking at is understanding compound interest and how, if you have it working for you as an investor, it's beautiful. But if you have it working against you in debt, you will be surprised what you're actually paying back. If you have a number of credit cards with high debt, you probably are looking at a mortgage that you're paying. If you looked at what you'll end up paying back. And so at this time, when you can actually defer your payments and have your interest deferred, that means that that hefty credit card interest that usually grows so rapidly, you can call companies and have that that stop accruing. This is a great time to do that. And when you do that, this is a great time to actually, we're not working, we have excess capital, to start eliminating some of our debt. The other thing is investing. Some balance between eliminating debt and investing, making informed decisions. The information I just shared is the kind of information you need to understand to make informed decisions during this time. Review your current investments. So in terms of making informed decisions, I've been doing this a long time, but in the recent past, I've been working with a lot of people and looking at their current investments, looking at their retirement portfolios. And many of them, this is the first time they've taken a critical look at it in a certain way. And they're seeing that they were not in very good investments. They were not in high yielding investments. They were not taking advantage of this long-term bull run. And so you want to review your current investments, make sure you have the right information to make good investment decisions now. Increase the amount that you're investing right now. Everything is on sale. And historically, up until now, for hundreds of years, the market has rebounded. It's rebounding faster than ever now. It reaches the point that it was before, and then it extends itself. So what is this? This is an opportunity to actually increase what you're putting in the market when it's lower. Start investing outside of your retirement. Great companies, stocks are on sale. If you're willing to educate yourself and take your time, there couldn't be a better time to start paying attention to the stock market now. Again, I'm sorry, I should have shared. When I talked about being a steward of your money, emergency fund and eliminating debt, I have a free download of a 10-minute webinar I do on debt elimination, and it's here. I also have the worksheet for snowballing, a debt elimination strategy that I've been using for decades now, that if you follow this strategy, you will be surprised at how quickly you can get out of debt. And on my website, wealthywomanmagic.com resources, you can also download the debt elimination form. Do I have that form up there? I believe I may. I definitely have the net worth form up there. Educating yourself, shoring up the current investments that you have to make sure that they're working for you, and then getting into the investing game. Remember, saving does not build wealth. I do a masterclass where I teach, it's an investing masterclass for women, how to understand the fundamental things you need to know and how to get into the investing game. And then the last thing, pay attention to your net worth. Shift from focusing on your income to measuring, tracking, and understanding your net worth, and start that now. And I have on my website, there's a free download there for the net worth.
Alicia, a quick question. Mm-hmm. Do you have any resources for men? So there's some men in the room who are asking if men can be a part of any of these activities.
So you can go to my website and download my forms. The workshops that I do now are mostly for women, but I am partnering with someone, and I meant to get his information so I could share it. But my email address is homes.alicia@gmail.com. He is working with men in a very similar way that I'm working with women. So food for thought. The current rate of wealth creation out of 100 workers at age 65, 1 will be wealthy, 4 will be financially independent, 41 will be working, and 4 will be dead broke. And so the choices, how you decide to spend your time, pay attention to, get the accurate information, will definitely find very often where we stand in this area. So again, I have an online investing masterclass for women. So my next one is Thursday, June 11th. It's from 6 to 8:30 p.m. It's usually $250 because of everything going on right now. I'm offering it, pay what you can. I don't want the same thing that happened the last time the market was in a downturn to happen to us again. It's a 47 suggested minimum, but it is pay what you can. And I want to take a moment to answer questions. I tried to keep this down to 30 minutes, which I was able to make it. And now I'm going to open up the floor for people if you have any questions for me. So Nadine.
You're on mute.
Hi, sorry, I was freezing a bit. Mm-hmm. Okay, so hey everyone, please drop some questions in the chat or raise your hand and say, hey, I would like to talk. And then I will allow some people to unmute and ask your questions. Okay, so we have one from Crystal Renee. So Crystal Renee, can you unmute yourself and share with us?
Hi, sure. So my question is, I know that right now student loans are all on 0% interest until October. And so I'm wondering, as someone who also wants to become a first-time home buyer, as soon as this market gets to its lowest, would you recommend paying off all of that, even though we don't know, politically if loans will end up being forgiven? Or would you recommend, maybe paying some of it and holding on to others of it if your credit score is high, no other debt, but you've got like 17K in loans and let's say 35,000 in the bank? Sorry, I'm just putting it all out there.
So no, that's actually a great question. I will summarize by saying that what you want to do is be very clear about what your goals are, and you want to make your goals a priority. So it's interesting now because the work that I'm doing with women, like one of my programs is I have a 6-week boot camp, but that's pretty much going to be full to start next week, where debt elimination, manage your money, paying off, like you look at all of these things, and what you want to maximize is what's your best opportunity for you. And one of the things that I am looking at is within the next 2 years, if in the past you had a struggle to purchase a home, I believe the opportunities to own property in the next 2 years are going to be tremendous. But in order to do that, you have to look at things like your credit. Now is the time to be spending less money than you've ever spent before, and make sure that you're making sound decisions just to take advantage of all of the opportunities. And again, the market is on sale. So many assets and great companies that you can buy are on sale. So all of these things are happening. So you want to look at your goal. Chances are there's going to be a great opportunity to purchase property. Your loans, you want to make sure your interest is not accruing on your loans. You may want to have some money that's being invested, and you want to be preparing to jump into the real estate market. So it's just a good time to look at all of those things. So that being said, if the interest is not accruing, and you have an opportunity to purchase, you could have an opportunity to purchase property soon. I give people the information. I don't say what you should do. I give you the information to help you make sound decisions. So interest is not accruing, the opportunity to purchase a home may be there. But if you had something like high interest credit cards, then this could be an opportunity to pay some of those down so that you increase your credit score, so that you're in a better position when it comes time to pay to purchase a home. And you want to look at something like your credit utilization rate and make sure you want to look at, if you had credit card debt, you want to look at all your credit card debt, get your utilization rate low on your credit cards. You want to just be making the sound choices to prep yourself for being able to purchase a home. And so yes.
Okay, so you don't necessarily think, that or would you know if you think there's a decent chance with student loans being forgiven?
We don't know what's going to happen there.
Right.
Yeah, we don't. There's so much I could say about that. Americans need to be better at advocating for themselves. Like my daughter was just in France for a study abroad for a year. They get mad about something in the whole country. They get on the street, they protest, they shut down, and the government listens to them. We're a little too docile. I mean, student loans are like really hurting us so much. We should really be organizing and doing everything we can to make this government accountable for forgiving student loans, not only just bailing out corporations on a high level.
Thank you.
Very good. So Donald, you also had a question about savings accounts. Can you jump in and ask your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could give just a brief on high yield savings accounts, like online savings accounts, Ally, and things of that nature.
What exactly do you want to know about them? I mean, if you have your money in a savings account, you're usually getting very, very low interest. And you want to go for the best savings accounts that you can, but this is a time to shift from savings, because saving doesn't build wealth, just savings, to understanding what it means to be an investor and take advantage of all of the opportunities there are right now to be investing. But yes, I mean, some percentage of your money should be in savings, and I would consider that your emergency fund. But after you have your emergency fund handled, it really is important to think about being an investor and being in the investing game.
Okay.
Okay, we have Lauren. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question for us?
Oh, I didn't have a question. I was responding to someone's curiosity about how to handle student loans in this time. So not a question.
Go ahead, you can share your comment.
Oh, I was responding to the fact that I personally wouldn't really rely on the government to ever fully forgive loans, student loans. And so, you know, as long as those have some decently high rates, and during this 3 to 4 month period, if it's within your bandwidth to pay down a huge chunk of that, I would definitely do that. It's something that I'm working towards. It really would not have faith in 10 years from now qualifying for the student loan forgiveness. A lot of people have said they've had to go through 1,000 miles of red tape, and very few people have successfully been forgiven their student loans yet at this point.
Yeah, so the thing that I would say about that, there's a class action suit. I don't know if people are aware, against, I think it's Navient, for the way that they have handled this. They've handled it so poorly. They directed people towards forbearance, where the interest keeps accruing. You had a $12,000 loan, you've been directed towards forbearance. You have maybe a few of them. The next thing you know, it's $18,000, $22,000. And so even the direction there, a lot of misdirection when it came to, there's so many options for forgiveness and ways that you can manage it. And those were not put forth. And so again, Americans, but there's a huge class action. It was so poorly handled. The red tape, you are so right. Even still, because I worked with a few people on this back in the day, and I worked for a nonprofit at a university, and I had quite a few people who fought, got through that red tape, pushed it through, and literally got their loans forgiven. But they did not make it easy. As a matter of fact, they misdirected people in all kinds of things. But even the case, there are a number, I personally, I know a young man, he came to work at the university in his mid-20s. I saw him go from that to having a family in his early 30s to having his loan completely forgiven by the time, you know, he had a young family in his early 30s, in his mid 30s.
So we have a question from Tina, and that'll be our last question. So Tina, you can unmute and ask your question.
Okay, hello. So you said that we're in a bear market, and I'm one of those people who's now kind of more trying to study stocks. And I see that a lot of the top stocks, top companies, they're at all-time highs.
Yeah.
So that's not really on sale. It's kind of, I don't want to say too late to get in, but what do you do with that? Because I kind of want to stick with the top companies since I'm just beginning.
So yeah, so you're right. A lot of, like, I have some incredible watch lists that stocks that I pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep getting alerts that they're at new highs, new highs, new highs, new highs. So because we're rebounding so quickly, but there still are a lot of great companies out there. And there was a pullback last week on some really important companies. There may be another pullback, and the next pullback may be huge.
Okay.
And so a lot of the information I shared about like not letting the fear overtake you and sell when it's low, we have not seen the worst of this and what could happen over the next couple of years. So many moving pieces, so many things shifting. And so what I would say to you around some of the companies, if some of the companies that you're looking at have hit new highs, a strategy is buying on the dips. And the market always dips. If you can see my finger, it goes like this, even though it's going up, it's going on a dip. So now a lot of these companies, all I have on a watch list, and I show this as a strategy. I have like a stock study group. We meet 3 days a week. We're about to start a little competition to look for dips in those companies. And there will be dips. Even in the best market, there's dips, but there's certainly going to be dips now.
Okay.
And I hope that answered your question, because I do want.
It does. And my second question was, so I've been advised to read this book, Money Master the Game, and in it, it's talking about just looking over, like you was talking about, looking over your 401k. So in your finance program, do you kind of show ways of going around that? Because I've tried to look at my 401k and I don't know what I'm looking at, because it's talking about all the fees and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm a little winded because I spent this morning doing the second part of my investing masterclass, and in the second part, my working session. So I give people the critical information you need to have in order to evaluate your accounts. You need to be able to assess fees. The SEC has a bulletin. It's very important. I give you the information how you assess fees. I would love to go into that right now, but I don't have the time. And then the other thing you want to look at is benchmarking. You want to look at something that you can compare it to. And so the benchmark is the S&P 500, and you want to look at how that's performing.
Okay.
And so you don't want to be in investments that are underperforming the market and have high fees. And then the most important thing, the only reason we invest is for our return on investment. And very often, even if we know what our return is, we're not clear about how to evaluate it. And so I show people how you look at your return on your investment, how you look at fees, and how you look at benchmarks to evaluate your 401ks. That's low-hanging fruit that everyone should do right now. So in this morning's working session, people were able to have them. I have a worksheet. This is how you evaluate your investments. There's so much I could say about the fact that so many of us are in investments that are not working for us, and you need to absolutely be able to evaluate them and have the right tools to evaluate that. So yes, that's a priority, and it's something that I prioritize in my investing masterclass.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Have about 3 minutes left, Alicia. So do you want to take one more question, or do you want to wrap up? How are you feeling?
Oh no, I'll take one more question.
Okay, so does anyone in the room have a question? If so, just drop in the chat and then I can let you know if you can unmute and ask.
One thing I see that someone said your emergency fund has to be more than $1,000, and it absolutely should be more than $1,000. The rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months of your basic living expenses. But what I'm finding is that a lot of people don't even have the $1,000, and it's just a place to start. So I do want to clarify that.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask for my NANA to say hello, but please let it be the person who asked for the question before. There's no name, so I don't know who to tell to unmute.
Okay, hi, this is Lynn. Hi, Alicia, this is Nateline. How are you? So good to hear you today. So I have a question. I just found out that I'm getting a buyout from my organization. And in terms of wealth building, it's $50,000, which is amazing for me. In terms of wealth building, where would you suggest to invest it? Home buying, stocks, bonds, paying debt? Or I don't have credit card debt because I work with you. So where would you advise that I invest it?
Oh, we have to have an offline. Nateline is actually calling from, where are you, in Rwanda right now?
I am in Rwanda indeed.
Wow. Beautiful.
Now, you and I need to have an offline conversation around that, Nateline. Yeah. Please be in touch with me.
Okay, I'll do that.
Uh-huh.
So, but for somebody else in a similar position, right? So I know that sometimes people say real estate is more stable than necessarily stock market. Would you say, like, is there any general advice, or is it really like you have to look at your situation about if you have money that you want to invest and you're just like, where do I start?
So where you start that's a question, but if you look at what you want to have is diversification. You want to have real estate, You want to have a stock portfolio. You want to make sure your retirement is taken care of. You want to have your emergency fund. And you want to be strategic about making sure all of those things are being handled. Where you start, I just said this time, where you start above all other things is making sure that you're managing your money well, and that 20% of your money is going to an investment. And you want to make sure those investments are working for you. So a big question that comes up is, if I want to get started investing, first of all, many of us are already investing in our retirement accounts. Make sure that's done correctly. I can't say that enough. But if you wanted to invest outside of your retirement account, there's something called robo-advisors right now. And they're like algorithmic, what they say, algorithmic trading. And they put you in index funds that perform along with the market, have the smallest fees. They use the best companies, Fidelity, Vanguard, iShares. It takes you 15 minutes to fill out a questionnaire. And in that questionnaire, they will come up with an incredible portfolio for you, and they will rebalance it. You can start with as little as $25. There's no reason for anyone not to be investing right now. The world of tech finance has made it so easy. I can say when I started investing 30 years ago, I had to call companies, get prospectus. It took me 7-8 weeks sometimes. And I had to write it down and put it in my little spreadsheets and charts and try to figure out, based upon what good sound investing principles someone told me about index funds, like that was like low hanging fruit. No, it's the place to start. I can share information about that. I'll talk about that. And what took me 7 to 8 weeks, honestly, right now, takes 15 minutes in something like a robo-advisor. And so there's one, I should be affiliate, called Elevest, that focuses on women, because we live longer, make less, and very often have interruptions in our work lives. So very often we have to be differently strategic about planning for our future. And so it caters towards that. It comes up with a great portfolio of stocks for you based upon your risk profile. You can even set up, they let you within the platform have a section where you put money for an emergency fund, where you put money for a child fund if you wanted to have children. I mean, they really have it set up thinking about women. It takes you 15 seconds. The fees are incredibly low. There's nerdwallet.com is a site that I go to do research. Nerdwallet.com has an article on the best robo-advisors for 2020. They compare them side by side, and it's an incredible resource.
So any final words as we are at time to kind of end us out before we leave? And before you say your final words, everybody, when you leave here, I encourage you to jump over to our little music break. Our DJ is missing all of us because so many of us came in here to get this financial wealth knowledge. So if you could, when you leave here, bounce over. But back to you, Alicia. Tell us, give us our exiting speech. Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
Okay. So I just, implore everyone that I know in these challenging times, is actually full of opportunities. Take the time to shore up your financial accounts. Don't let fear be the driver for your decision-making. That's what I would say. So many people put term versus whole life insurance. In one of my boot camps, I do a whole presentation on the difference between the two, when it's wise to think about using the two, and how you should approach the whole insurance game. And that's far too much to do in a short conversation. But make sure you understand, if you don't know what you want, people will sell you things that you don't need. So way before you start buying insurance, you should be clear about what your needs are and why and what kind of insurance then will meet your needs. Okay. So, all right.
Thank you, everybody. I will see you
welcome.
soon. So please hop over into the music break, and then I will see you in a little bit when we are shifting over to relationships. Bye.
I'm actually just going through the chats right now because I didn't get a chance to see all of them when they were flowing through.